Hello, my love. I hope that you're doing well today. Obviously, I'm trying to get ahead of the curve today by dressing up as the iconic Monica Bellucci because I think that everyone is going to dress like her for Halloween. I feel like if you go out to a party, you're going to run into like at least 10 of her, and you could probably consider that your lucky day. But I have other plans for my Halloween costume, so I decided to dress up like her today so that we could talk about Beetlejuice. If you've never been here before, then welcome. I am Haunted Hippie. I am actually not too different to Beetlejuice's ex-wife because I too am part of the cult. Super low stakes. We're not a death cult or anything. All you have to do to join is click subscribe, and that's the only rule to join. There's no other weird fine print. It also helps to click the like button and the notification bell, that way you never miss the next video. But let's just get today's video started. If you haven't seen the movie yet, don't worry. The first half of this video will be spoiler free, and I will give you a big spoiler warning before we get into the whole story. And to kick off that spoiler free section, I want to talk about my opinion of the original Beetlejuice and kind of what my expectations were walking into the theater. I also just kind of want you to know who you're dealing with as I talk about Beetlejuice today. So I was born in 99, I'm 25, and I didn't really grow up on Beetlejuice. I grew up on a lot of other Tim Burton, so I am obsessed with Corpse Bride. I have been ever since it came out when I was only 5 years old. I also was very obsessed with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I always loved his adaptation of Alice in Wonderland, even though I know that it's had some negative ripple effects in terms of what Disney creates now. I still love that movie. It gets a lot of hate, and I don't even care. I've always been a huge Tim Burton girly, let's just put it that way. And so when I finally watched the original Beetlejuice for the first time at like age 21 or age 22, it was around there, I was not impressed. I don't know if things would have been way different if I had seen the movie as a kid. I honestly couldn't tell you, because sometimes that happens where when you're a child and you have like the nostalgia cloud, it's hard to tell what the actual quality of a film is. Sometimes you can differentiate, like when I rewatch Charlie and the Chocolate Factory now, it's like, do I still find that to be the peak of cinema? No. Sometimes though it is a little bit harder to tell, and I don't know what the case would be with Beetlejuice. Unfortunately, I'll never know. But the first time I watched it, I really disliked it. I did not enjoy Michael Keaton's performance. I wasn't really into like any of the comedy of the movie. And then we rewatched it together. I do a bunch of watch-alongs on this channel, and watching it with my audience, I always tend to enjoy movies more that way. It's always more fun than watching a movie alone. And my opinion of it did jump up significantly. I think the first time I rated it on Letterboxd, I gave it maybe like 1.5 stars. I thought that it was a great concept that had kind of gone to waste because of like the weird perverted comedy. And I still kind of feel that way. Like I do feel like the movie is not self-critical enough, especially because it seems like it's targeted towards children. It is rated PG, even though there are some fun curse word moments. The second time around, I was kind of able to separate the Michael Keaton Beetlejuice of it all from everything else about the movie. I still find him unfunny, insufferable, annoying in that original film, but I love everything else. I think it is so inventive. I love all the practical effects. I love the world building. I love how just nothing makes sense because it's a Tim Burton movie and the worlds he creates are just always so wacky and unique. I love Winona Ryder and Gina Davis. I think they have really earnest performances. And then of course, Catherine O'Hara. I will go insane and I will take you with me.
I will go insane and I will take you with me.
I'm loving that more people are appreciating that line as they're going back and rewatching the original movie now. That line goes so hard. Like, I'm obsessed with it. I even quoted that for my second Letterboxd review, in which I bumped the movie up to 3 stars. Unfortunately, I guess I still just find Beetlejuice himself to be so annoying that it kind of clouds my enjoyment of things. And I'm not super big on the climax of the movie. It's not where I'm like, ugh, so problematic, so dated, he's trying to marry a minor. I just don't really find that whole situation to be funny, fantastical, enjoyable. It's just kind of like, especially after I was so invested in the story of this couple because we open on them. I'm really rooting for them to like get help and be able to scare these awful people out of their old home. And then it's kind of like suddenly everything shifts and everything is just all about Beetlejuice and Lydia. So I still do have my problems with the original Beetlejuice, but what I'm hoping will happen is that upon every rewatch, hopefully I'll find something else to love and that my rating will keep going up and up, because that has happened with many movies in the past. But getting on to my expectations of Beetlejuice. So that's how I was feeling. That's all that I was carrying, you know, when the sequel was announced, which was a long time ago. And then finally it was like, oh, we're getting it this year. Cool. I had the expectation actually that I would probably like it more than the original, because there just are certain things that you can't really get away with now, lest you want to suffer immense amounts of criticism from the more sensitive areas of the audience. So I thought that I could expect them to kind of dial back all all of the more perverted humor. Or at the very least, if it was present, it would be a little bit more self-critical. And I thought that with the addition of Jenna Ortega and the returning cast members that I really enjoy, that I was bound to at least enjoy myself, have fun. I didn't have super high expectations. I kind of was expecting to give it a 3-star rating after walking out, and that was after not seeing any trailers. And again, for my subs, I'm so sorry, I have to do this every time, be so redundant, but for big movies like this, I just always assume that I'm gonna get some new faces on this channel. I don't watch trailers. I had not seen a single trailer nor a single teaser. I think that I had seen one image of Michael Keaton back in the Beetlejuice makeup that circulated on Twitter, but beyond that, I didn't know anything. People were upset that Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis were not returning. I didn't really need them to come back. I felt like we had enough returning characters and enough returning gags that like wasn't really a problem. I think it just would have convoluted what already was a movie with a ton of open plot threads, but we'll get there. I was really excited to be seeing it in the Dolby Cinema because, again, we have the music of Danny Elfman, who is probably my favorite composer of all time. I'm actually finally seeing him live for the first time in my life this year, and sure enough, being in the Dolby Cinema was fantastic. I'm always hyping that cinema up. I talked about it in my Alien Romulus review too. I should really stop because they're never gonna sponsor me, but anyway. Beetlejuice actually exceeded my expectations. Just a little bit though, okay? I thought it was gonna be just like a fun 3-star experience because I've never been that big of a Beetlejuice girly, but there were some curveballs and some things that surprised me, and I ended up enjoying it more than the original movie, which is what I thought would happen, but not to the extent that I did. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't a crazy revelation or anything. I gave it 3.5 stars out of 5. I just had so much fun. The vibes were good. I would wholeheartedly recommend this movie. Back to what I was saying about the plot, there are a lot of very random and kind of sparse plot threads all just flailing about because this movie is not so interested with that. This movie is more interested in being a broad comedy. It's just a long string of gags, and I'm totally fine with that. What could have easily bumped this movie up from a 3.5 to a 4, 4.5, whatever, is if that wasn't the case. If the plot line that we got with Jenna Ortega's character wasn't so basic, something that, we hadn't seen before, and the plot was a little bit stronger in that way. It just felt like a lot of the plot threads were all kind of basic because they just weren't that interested in catering to that. Then yes, this would have been a much higher quality movie, but I honestly don't really fault these people for just wanting to make a fun comedy and just wanting to have fun in general. I think that Jenna Ortega is a fine addition. I think that if her character was written to be less basic, then I would have higher praise for her. I did feel at times that it kind of was just a recycling of her Wednesday character, but even then, she didn't really have the fun little flat affect and the kind of darkness to her. She very much just was a normal girl. There wasn't very much to her. They gave her the dead parent trope and her B plot, if you will. I felt like they were all B plots. I don't know what I can comfortably call the A, B, C plots. Hers was also just really basic. Everything surrounding Jenna Ortega, yes, we love her, okay, but I just don't want to be crucified by the stans because she's such a major girly right now, and I love her too, okay? I love her too. Let's not act like they were reinventing the wheel with her in this movie, okay? She's in this movie to get butts in seats. She's very much like the Winona Ryder of her generation. Well, maybe she's not quite on that level yet, but she is an it girl. I think my point is just that Jenna Ortega is there. She's not the standout, and that's fine. Hi, editing Kylie here, and I just want to try to save myself a little bit. All I am saying here is that she really just didn't get to flex any of her acting muscles in this movie. Just in general, I love to see actresses of her caliber take on more dynamic roles. I just was really having trouble wording that, apparently, in this review, but still love that she's in Beetlejuice. I love that she has become sort of, I guess, part of Tim Burton's filmmaking family. I'm super stoked to see more of their collaborations in the future. Winona Ryder, oh, I loved her. Her facial expressions, that girl, I love how expressive her face is. I was kind of getting a little bit of Joyce from Stranger Things in her, but I feel like they just are Winona-isms, and it's exactly what I love about her. We got a lot of that from Beetlejuice. Her character arc was a little weird, but ultimately satisfying, and we can get into that later. In this movie, Lydia is dating a man named Rory, who is played by Justin Theroux. I thought that he also was a really fun addition, although it it took me a little while to get into his character, and honestly a little while to get into this movie in general. I'm kind of just talking about characters right now, but I do want to point out that the first act, it took me a while to get into it, period. Not just with his character, but just in general. I was not into the comedy of the first act, and I was thinking that the whole experience of the movie was not going to be that great because it just was falling really flat for me. Besides when we're introduced to Monica Bellucci's character, but more on that later. The whole first act I just wasn't sold on, and then things got a lot better, including with the character of Rory. I thought that Justin Theroux was such a fun addition, though I have to say the best addition to this universe is 100% Willem Dafoe. This just was not a role that I was expecting from him, and that man's range is just out of this world. To think that in just a few months we're going to be seeing him in Nosferatu, and I can only assume that his performance is going to be on the opposite end of the spectrum, just probably very serious, period piece, gothic, moody, and then you have him in Beetlejuice playing this dead actor cop. He's hilarious. Like, he is so clearly having the time of his life, and I feel like everyone working on this movie was. I felt like there just was so much joy on this set. You can also tell from all of the interviews with Winona Ryder and Jenna Ortega, they seem like two peas, both very much into cinema, and Winona, maybe not purposefully, is kind of shading like her Stranger Things co-stars who are not into cinema. Jenna Ortega very much is, and so that came up a lot during all the press interviews and stuff, and people online are also saying that actors who are deeply into cinema and cinema history have so much more aura than those who don't. Hard agree. Willem Dafoe is the best addition, but the best character overall, I think, has to go to Catherine O'Hara. But who's shocked about that? That woman is hilarious. Is she the funniest actress of all time? I think that question could be on the table, like, very reasonably. She is still so hilarious in this movie. I also love the shift in her character. In the original movie, she is very self-obsessed and she is so easy to hate. I love that she was made a little bit more dynamic and quite a bit more likable in Beetlejuice, because you would expect to see some growth in a character after 30 years, and they did so in a positive way that I really just was not expecting, so kudos for that. And now the character that you might be most curious about, because I never have been a Beetlejuice girly. From the original movie, he annoyed me a lot. In Beetlejuice, I actually find Michael Keaton funny. It is not going to be groundbreaking to most of you because you're going to be like, duh, finally you've caught up. You remember, born in 99. I did not experience Michael Keaton when he originally was a comedic actor. I have really only known him in more serious roles. So when I saw Beetlejuice for the first time, it was kind of weird to see him in such a role. Now, I'm one of the girlies that gets it. I thought that he was so well written in Beetlejuice, where I don't think that his character really changed. I think that there were some really, really weird bits that I'm not really on board with, but that fell in line with the tone of the original character in that they were kind of gross, but framed in such a way that you were reading the joke from Lydia's perspective. It was never a question of like, are they trying to frame this as, oh, haha, that's just Beetlejuice, just being a perv. It was very much framed like, oh my god, like this fucking guy again. So then I didn't ever really cringe. I felt like I was able to laugh with the movie. There are some bits though that like, I don't know if I can really be on board with, but we'll get into that with spoilers. But for the most part, totally enjoyed myself with his performance. I was so pleasantly surprised. Although, I guess, maybe I wasn't like that surprised. I did think that they would kind of tone that down a little bit. Anyway, I don't know if I could call him my favorite character from the movie. And I also don't know if I could call Monica Bellucci my favorite character from the movie, although that's not even her name. What is her name? Dolores, right, okay. I don't think she gets enough screen time for me to say that she was my favorite part of this movie, but whenever she shows up, and it's very few and far between because like I said, the plot threads, they're very sparse, they're very just like flapping in the wind, but whenever she shows up, it is glorious. I kind of wish that she had more to do. There's like a sliver of a part of me that wishes that, but honestly, I don't really. If I were Tim Burton and I were dating Monica Bellucci, I also would just throw her into this movie for no reason other than to be like, look how hot my girlfriend is and look how fun she is. I think that that is completely reasonable. Zero issues with that. I mean, obviously because she inspired my look today. I honestly would get married in this makeup. I really would. I mean, I would have it done professionally because like I'm not that good at makeup, but this is a look, no? Now I've talked talked a lot about the characters, and I feel like that is the main point of this movie because I'm not gonna talk about any of the gags in the spoiler-free section. I want you to just enjoy those with a fresh mind. Before the movie itself and just like pacing and narrative and everything, like I said, already didn't mind that the narrative was thin and basic, but if you also are feeling like it's having a rocky start and you're a little worried that the movie is not gonna get better, don't worry. It does. I feel like it kind of has a rocky first act and a rocky like last 5 minutes. The climax was fantastic. Like that was my favorite part of the movie, almost the entire third act. And then it didn't quite stick the landing in the very end. Like I suppose they're probably just trying to leave it open for another sequel. Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. Finally, we'll get his name 3 times in the title, I suppose. But it was a little weird. It was a little rough. I'm just so glad that I did end up having as much fun with it as I did. I left the movie despite, you know, those last 5 minutes, you know, feeling it really positively about it. And even though this is the biggest theatrical opening that Warner Bros. Has ever had, not monetarily, but just like theater number wise, I do want to urge you to get out and see it soon because they've already announced that this movie is going to be available to stream starting in October. I don't understand that. Why not let this movie just be purely theatrical so that it's a great Halloween time film? Like, yes, we're also going to be getting Terrifier 3 and what else is coming to theaters in October? Whatever. The point is, like, yeah, there are big horror movies, but Terrifier caters to a completely different audience. It's not like that's gonna shove Beetlejuice out or it's gonna be that much of a competition. Like, they're completely different audiences. Same thing with Smile 2. I just feel like that is for a different audience. I honestly can't think of a better movie to have in theaters during October than Beetlejuice because it is fun for the whole family. It really feels like the classic kind of hocus pocus classic Disney. It has that vibe to it, and I'm like, finally? Are we getting back to that quality of film? Because for another thing, like almost everything in the movie is entirely practical, and I feel like movies are so back, especially also with having a big Tim Burton movie in theaters. I'm just like, yeah, give it to me all day. There is some weird stuff concerning the non-return, / return of the Jeffrey Jones character, and I think I kind of want to get into that in my spoiler section, but just for now, I'll say that I'm like a little bit conflicted about it. I'm having a little bit of trouble figuring out the framing of that and the intentions there, but we will dive into that in my spoiler section, which is about to start. So if you haven't seen the movie, I would highly recommend getting out and seeing it. Don't worry, I will be sitting here in my gorgeous, gorgeous makeup waiting for you when you get back. Ooh, although it does look a little smudgy now. You know what? I shouldn't touch it. Anyway, I guess we can just get into the Jeffrey Jones stuff right now because that does kind of open the movie. I mean, we find out that Lydia Dietz is this TV personality and stuff, and I thought the opening was really corny and not very funny. I guess sometimes that happens with Tim Burton movies where I'm not quite prepared to just like jump in to all the quirkiness and all the weirdness of his universes. Sometimes I need to like dip my toes in and like wade in before I like get the vibes. And so kind of just was thrown into it. I didn't find the first act funny, like I mentioned, because we also learn that Jeffrey Jones' character, and I keep forgetting his name, Charles Dietz, I apologize, that he has died. And there's this really weird stop motion sequence where we find out that he was in a plane crash and then he was eaten by a shark. They use Jones's likeness so much in the movie. I don't understand how that could have happened without him being paid in some way, which to me is worse than just like not inviting him back at all. If you don't know what he was credibly accused of and all of that, then I would look into it. I think actually, did he plead guilty to all that? You know what, the titles, the headlines will be on screen. I feel like a bigger slap in the face to him as a person would just be to kill him off and then not really give his character any type of moment in the movie. That's why I was having trouble reading it. I'm like, is this a revenge fulfillment fantasy by having his character walk around with his whole head bitten off, letting somebody else voice act for him and replace him in the role? Like, oh, haha, you're dead to us kind of a thing. But then I also felt weird about it because he's pictured so many times in the movie, like in his funeral service and stuff. There's a big picture of his head, and to me, it felt like they were memorializing the character. So I just didn't really know what was going on there. And also, Tim Burton has neglected to speak about that and his intentions in any interviews or anything. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. Okay, you know what? My makeup is bothering me. I'm gonna fix this. 2 seconds. Okay, that's a little better, I think. I just quite literally am like sweating off all of my makeup today. It is so hot. But yeah, I don't really know how I feel about all of that. It felt like a very loving tribute to the character just because Delia was so obsessed with finding him in the afterlife and like paying respect to him. But maybe I just can't separate the actor from the character. I don't know. But we find out he's dead. There's a funeral, yada yada. Then Rory proposes roses to Lydia. And they set up, yet again, just everything about Jenna Ortega's character was very basic. So there's the really strained relationship with her and her mom, and she has a dead dad, and she was besties with the dad, and now she's mad at the mom. Tale as old as time, older than dust. She also meets a boy, and oh, they hit it off because both of them are not like the other boys and girls. He listens to the Pixies? No. What? She's read Crime and Punishment 3 times? Not like the other girls, never. This is one of those Tim Burtonisms that I just, every single time I'm like, I cannot with you anymore. We get it, Tim. You grew up in Burbank. You were so different and so strange. I mean, that's why I connected to all of his work as a kid, and probably why I still do now. I just feel like with Beetlejuice, they went the most basic route with it, and I'm like, why? Because you actually are weirdos, like majority of you. Jenna Ortega has been in interviews talking about how when she was a little kid, she used to like dissect lizards and stuff, and I'm like, that's real freak shit. Like, we see each other. And then with Tim Burton, in my deep dive of him that I did, I let him tell this story about how he tricked this other little kid into thinking his brother had died because he put this kid's clothing in a swimming pool, and then he told this kid's brother that they put too much acid in the pool, and so his body dissolved. That's real freak shit. Like, why are we making the weird girl in the movie be like, yeah, I read Crime and Punishment 3 times? That just always rubs me the wrong way, and I had similar complaints about like Lisa Frankenstein. She's supposed to be the weird girl, but she's just like not that. I'm just nitpicking at this point though, because like I said earlier, that didn't really bother me that much. But the fact that she meets this cute boy and things seem well, but then he betrays her. Not all men, but like, isn't it though? We've just been there before. You know, I didn't really see the plot twist coming, the fact that he was going to be trading in her life for his, but obviously smelled something stank, like knew that something was wrong when he was taking her into the afterlife. As soon as he was like, I can take you to see your dad, I was like, well, this has been nice and fun while it lasted. Right after we find this out though, the fact that Delia accidentally kills herself because she got scammed and she got 2 very much fanged snakes who bit her, I thought that was hilarious, but I was like, why are we killing off Delia? It all kind of worked out, and it really was just to service funny bits with her dealing with the afterlife. And I was like, yeah, you know what? That was something that I wanted to see, because say it with me, class, Catherine O'Hara is the funniest person in this movie. I also kind of love that while we are in the afterlife, they're going to take her on the soul train and you can't come back from it. It's a one-way ticket, you know? And then that whole sequence, there are no stakes. Everyone's just dancing. She gets pushed onto the train, and then her mother just simply pulls her off. And then there's an exit door, because who needs stakes? Who really needs that much friction? We're just here to have fun. And then her dad helps them escape, and it's the very basic, oh, yada yada, take care of each other, basic. My favorite part of the whole movie, I think, has to be the church scene. I guess I knew that there was going to be a lip-syncing scene to an iconic song. I just wasn't that fond of the song choice, but it didn't really matter because I loved the scene so much anyways. Very different vibe to Come Mr. Tallyman, Tally Me Banana, but it worked. I thought that the physical performances, especially of everyone in this scene, were so good. We got a lot of the Wednesday vibe from Jenna Ortega with her dancing, which I guess that's just how she dances, and I love it. She kind of has like a puppet vibe, a very kind of like disconnected vibe to her. The pastor character was hilarious. Okay, character actor, what's his face? Bern Gorman, what a name. Is that his real name? He plays Father Damien. I loved all the performances and all the gags of that scene. I thought it was phenomenal. And then of course, because of some loopholes, you know, the solutions are quite easy. We get rid of the ex-wife, we get rid of Beetlejuice. Happily ever after until like the final 5 minutes. Like I said, Lydia has a couple of nightmares. One in particular where Astrid gets married and then gives birth to the same baby Beetlejuice that we saw earlier. I don't know why baby Beetlejuice came out of my mouth like that, but I think I'm just a little bit uncomfortable talking about this. That was one of the gags I had mentioned earlier, but we're finally circling back to so I can actually talk about it. Some of the gags, they didn't work for this girl. The baby Beetlejuice comes back. I didn't like it in that final sequence, and I didn't like it when Beetlejuice was making Lydia pregnant and it exploded out of her body and her dress. That was a little too much for me. That bordered on just, hey, I don't want to see that. But those are the only 2 little gags that are coming to mind that I actually actively wish I didn't see. I just feel like pregnancy is something that I can't really handle as a gag. Like, pregnancy is something something very serious to me. There's a lot of pregnancy horror in the world that is very much R-rated with good reason. And so that's why for me, I just couldn't really connect with it in this movie. I was like, no, no, no. Anyway, then of course, in the very ending, she has this false awakening with Beetlejuice lying beside her, and then she actually wakes up and she's all alone. And it was just a little bit less of a hopeful note to end on with the movie. And I understand that because this movie is going to be so big, it already has made so much money. Obviously, they're probably leaving the door open to reawaken this and actually create a franchise for the first time. It took 30 years to make a sequel for whatever reason, and now I think that we might get another one within the next couple of years. They've got some powerhouses in the franchise now, especially considering the involvement of Jenna Ortega. Maybe in this movie because Delia Dietz was killed off, maybe in a way that was sort of passing the torch off to Jenna Ortega. I don't know. I wouldn't mind waiting, honestly. I mean, I really enjoyed this movie, but I would like to wait until we can get a more proper sequel, until they have enough time to come up with enough new gags to make a whole other movie. And speaking of gags, I didn't even really mention Danny DeVito. It was fun to have him there for like 2 seconds. Didn't really think that we got to see any Danny DeVito isms or much fun from him, but you know, I was glad to have him there. Why not? If we got another Beetlejuice movie in the next few years where it's just a bunch of fun celebrity cameos, sort of like it was in this movie, then I'd be totally fine with that. But I think that I've talked enough about Beetlejuice. Not a whole lot of plot to even get into, right? Just a lot of fun, and I have to wrap it up because I am gonna keep melting like the goddamn Wicked Witch of the East. So I hope that you've enjoyed. If you want to see other new horror reviews, then check out the other content on my channel. I also do rankings, deep dives. If you're into Tim Burton, that is a huge video on my channel. I cover not only the timeline of his career, but the timeline of every scandal he's ever been in, because just as a huge fan of him, I prefer to also be like an informed consumer, you know? I also have a second channel where I talk a lot about physical media. That's mostly what it's dedicated to, but also to travel content and going on spooky outings. And I have a Patreon. We love the patrons. I offer so much bonus content over there. You get a bonus video every single week, depending on which tier you belong to. You can also find me on social media. Everything you need is linked down below. But more than anything, I just hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope I catch you in the next one. Bye!